So let's chat today on how to bounce back from a bad month. This is not something that I talk about very often, but hey, look, we all have bad months in business every now and then. And I got to tell you, if you haven't had a bad month, you haven't been in business long enough. I've had them. The one of the keys to success I'm going to talk about though is how fast you bounce back from a bad month. If you listen to the Small Business Administration, I think it's like 90% of businesses fail right after 10 years. And so why is that? Well, it's because these people had bad months and another bad month and another bad month and another bad month and never recovered. And so your ability to, number one, bounce back from a bad month, but then number two, adapt is going to determine your success in this business. I got to tell you, though, if you're listening to this podcast and you want to be a successful wholesaler, you're in the right place. With my not so humble brag is that I have generated probably the top 90% of the top 10 wholesalers in this country have come from listening to this podcast or been coached by me. And that's because I had great mentors who showed me the way. And I think I've done a really good job of simplifying this business for a lot of people. So if you have been listening to this podcast and you've had a bad month, listen to this, okay? Because I'm going to show you how to bounce back. If you have not downloaded our script, by the way, the one that we use to talk to motivated sellers, go to nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com/script, nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com/script, and you get a copy of the very same script that we use to talk to motivated sellers every single day. Okay, back to the basics. All right, so let's talk about what do you do if you have a bad month? Well, first thing that you need to do is take a look at really your progress versus your goal. Okay, how far you have come versus how far you have to go. And I think a lot of people get very, very frustrated when they have a bad month and they feel like their goal is insurmountable, right? They're like, oh, I can't get over that mountain. Let me tell you a quick story. This weekend, I was at a swim meet with my 4 kids, but my second oldest daughter, let's call her Autumn, is pretty good. She's a pretty good swimmer, and well, actually, she's very good. And long story short, she, at the time of this recording, she is 14 years old. And she swam on Sunday, and she did a time of 57.4 seconds in her 100 freestyle. Okay, 57.4 seconds in her 100 freestyle. And if you don't know anything about swimming, that's pretty good for a 14-year-old girl. But she was really, really disappointed. Very, very disappointed. She wanted to go somewhere in the 55-second range, and she had trained really hard, and she had put some time in, and this was a championship meet. And even though this was the best time for her, she was really, really, really frustrated. She looked at this as a down meet or a down month for her, and she got really, really frustrated. And I said, Autumn, I said, what I want you to do here is you got to take a look at your progress versus your goal. Because 1 year ago from this past weekend, her and I were actually at a swim meet up in Northern California, and her goal was to break a minute in her 100 freestyle. She was 13 at the time. And long story short, she was trying to break a minute forever. This is like a year ago. And finally, at the meet, by the way, she was a little sick and had a cough and a little bit of a fever. And she hopped in the pool during 100 free, and I remember she went like a 59.9. And she was like just so ecstatic, like that was her goal. Well, that was a year ago. And so in swimming, just dropping seconds is like a really, really, really tenths of seconds is a really, really big deal, especially when you get to this level. And so long story short, over the year, right, if she would have been stoked to break a minute, that was a year ago. Now at this meet, she goes to 57. That's 3 seconds better in 1 year, which basically is like, solar systems in swimming. I mean, that is a giant, 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 gap that she covered, right? And so I had to reframe. I said, oh, you got to take a look back at all these little drops that you've had over the year. I know it doesn't seem like a lot because you haven't had like this one giant thing, but take a look at how far you've come, right? I know that you want to be in that 54, 55 range, but you've dropped down from a minute in this short amount of time, right? So you got to get your confidence up. Now, one of my mentors, Dan Sullivan, says, hey, Todd, protecting your personal confidence is your number one job as an entrepreneur. All right. And so just like I told my daughter, I said, hey, you got to protect your confidence. Look how far you've come, right? Don't beat yourself up. You got a best time. Look, if we're going to do that, it's going to take us maybe a little bit longer than we thought. You got to protect your confidence. If you've got a bad month, you can't be thinking, oh, maybe I should switch to selling diabetic strips this month, or maybe I should go back to my old job. Get your head straight. Okay, so I know that was a little bit long of a first point, but okay, remember, you got to take a look at how far you've come to where you are today. Look how much progress you've made instead of how far you have to go. Number two is take an inventory of what happened. Let's separate fiction from reality. Did you screw up someplace in your business? Hey, by the way, that's okay. I can't tell you how many times I've screwed up in my own business. Did you stop marketing? And that's a big one, right? Remember, what you do today is a result of what you did 90 days ago. So maybe you're cold calling a bunch today, or maybe you're doing a bunch of marketing, but maybe you stopped 90 days ago. Something was going on in the market and you're like, man, where are all the leads? Where's my pipeline? Right? So you got to take a look and say, oh, maybe I wasn't calling people back. Maybe I wasn't following up. Maybe I was only looking on low-hanging fruit, right? And so take an inventory and say, okay, here's what I did, and here's what I could have done better, and here's how I prevent this from happening again, right? You want to sit there and you want to actually control the controllables, right? Control the controllables. The third part, again, is did you get lazy or make a mistake? So that's the first one, and you can fix that. The second part is, okay, was there a market change? So back in August of 2022, there was a nasty adjustment in the market, and wholesalers had a really hard time selling their deals for prices that they were accustomed to, right? And so there were a lot of deals that were locked up, a lot of deals that were lost, and that's really demoralizing, right? That's still going on right now if you're not negotiating the right way, which a little foreshadowing of what's to come here in this episode. Okay, but the most important thing is that you now adjust. And so, yes, there may have been a market shift. Yes, that was out of your control, but now how you react to that, okay, is going to help you bounce back. So for us, we're doing deals right now in this market. We've had to make some adjustments. If we didn't make those adjustments and we had to do things the old way, guess what? We wouldn't be making any real amount of money here. Okay, so understand, yes, there are market changes. Yes, you have to adapt, okay? Don't just sit there and cry about how the market shifted and how sellers aren't going to sell to you for the new discounted price that you are going to have to negotiate, which I'm going to talk about here in this podcast episode. Okay, the next part is understand that there is a persistent factor in the market before the pendulum swings. Okay, what does that mean? Is that if this is due to a market shift, let's say you had a bad month and all of a sudden you were locking up properties at too high prices and you could not sell them, which happened to a lot of people. Okay, a lot of people will and are dropping out of the business, which is amazing. Because if you do it, I'm telling you, and you follow what I'm talking about the podcast, there is going to be a pruning of people who don't know what they're doing. And now you are going to be one of the few elite wholesalers left. One of my favorite scenes is in the movie Forrest Gump, where they buy a shrimp boat and Lieutenant Dan and Forrest Gump are trying to get shrimp and they're like barely catching any, right? They're barely catching any. And all of a sudden one day a hurricane is coming and they go out in the middle of the storm and they brave the storm. The rain is coming down and Lieutenant Dan is yelling at God and saying, "Is this all you got? Give me your best shot." And he's screaming at God to bring more rain and bring more storm. And you know, he was going through a hard time in his life at that moment. And long story short, they go back to the harbor and every single shrimp boat is out of commission and they're the only shrimp boat left. And after that, their company catapults to the #1 shrimp company in the nation, and they wind up selling for hundreds of millions of dollars. The next part about this, so just understand that if this is a market related shift, okay, understand that persistence, if you persist, okay, there's going to be a pruning and then a flood of deals coming in. Okay, now here's the next thing. I'm really going to get practical here. If you have a down month, you must generate revenue now as fast as humanly possible, right? Cash is the lifeblood of your business. This is no secret. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to go through your database. Hopefully, for the love of God, you have a database, right? And if you don't, get one. What I mean by that is any kind of system that you use to keep track of your leads, okay? One of the CRMs that I recommend is FreedomSoft. Check out nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com/CRM, nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com/CRM. Great way to follow up with your leads. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to do something called a top 20. What does top 20 mean? That means go through all of your leads and start labeling them hot or warm, right? Or cold. And in your whole database, you should have 20 people who are the closest to transacting with you as possible, right? The 20 that are the most motivated. They have a problem and you are going to help solve it. Why 20? Because I find that that's the maximum number that you can really focus in on. Everything else, just kind of take a back seat to these top 20. Now, for these top 20, what I want you to do is focus in on it, look at the situation, call them, and now push the sale forward, okay, by getting a commitment with them on the very next step in the sales process. This is something that I talk about in No Limit Selling System, okay, on getting commitments, right? Ask them what the next step they need to make a decision to do business with you. Then get a time and a date to talk next and what has to happen between now and then. Tell them it's okay to say no, okay, give them an out. But what you want to do is start to squeeze these leads, right? Wring out the water, wring out the juice, okay, so that now, again, you could focus on this top 20, extract revenue. When you have this top 20, you know, again, the very next step in the sales process. So one of the things I do with my sales team is I say, okay, give me your top 20. Let's make sure that there's a next step on every single one of these leads. Okay, what's the next step? Get a date and time, move on from there. Next thing I'm going to tell you after you do that, okay, that's like by far the most important thing. Next thing that I want you to do is text message your entire database, right? Let's see who you've missed. Let's see who you haven't followed up with. Say, hey, so-and-so, this is Todd. I know we haven't spoken in a while. You're interested in selling your house on 1231 Main Street. Would you be interested in talking? By the way, the CRM that I recommended, go to nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com/CRM, does this for you automatically. Okay, so you want to check that out. Next thing is you want to make sure you're sending offers out to everyone who you're talking to. For people on that top 20 list, I don't like to just send out offers. I like to talk. I like to nurture. I like to take that down a path so that either A, we're meeting them with them in person, or a notary is meeting them in person, or at the very least, we are handling the contract signing process over the telephone in some way. Everybody else who maybe you thought was a no, they weren't motivated, you want to be emailing offers out to these people. Very, very, very important that you do that. Next is remember that, by the way, if you do this, you'll start to see that your bad month, you are going to start to get some momentum, right? You're going to start to extract revenue out of here, your top 20, you're going to text your database, all of a sudden you're going to start to look alive here. Next is I noticed that wholesalers tend to get a little bit lazy with their buyers list. They don't list on the MLS. And so I would network with other wholesalers who might be struggling, and I would help them sell their deals by selling to my newly refreshed buyers list, or you help them list their deal on the MLS. I've done a lot of episodes on listing deals on the MLS. I highly recommend that you go ahead and listen to those. Do not underestimate how you can capitalize on another wholesaler's laziness or limiting beliefs or lack of education, okay? Be a resource, and now you can get a bunch of deals in the door without having to put up any money. Next, sharpen up your negotiation skills, right? Every wholesaler that I've ever talked to thinks they are better at closing than they are, okay? If you haven't bought the No Limit Selling System, buy it, nolimitsalessystem.com. If you don't have enough money, go ahead and listen to the podcast that I've done on sales. Okay, you can get a lot from that for free. But you need to stay on top of your negotiation skills. If you did one deal for $10,000 this month and that one deal could have been 50, Do you understand how that $40,000 in additional revenue is going to affect your business? It turns a crappy month into a good month. You do that for 2 deals. You take two $10,000 deals and you take them and you turn them into two $50,000 deals. That's $100,000. That is like the difference between poverty, okay, and netting $1 million a year is your negotiation skills. So you must, number one, train yourself. Number two, practice, practice, practice. And talking to motivated sellers, right, is not practice. Practicing and reevaluating what you did during practice and then implementing. That's practice, okay? That's why football players, they practice in between games. They're not like, hey, I get practice during Sunday, right? No, they practice for 5 days a week, right? And they play the game one. All right. Next is go through your books, right? Or your credit cards and get rid of all unnecessary expenses, right? If you've got some tools you're not using, get rid of them. Okay. You got some software you're not using, get rid of it. You got like an office that you're not really going into, get rid of it, right? Increase your cash flow. If you've got tools that you have to use, go back to your vendors and renegotiate. Okay. Renegotiate better rates. If all of a sudden you have like a higher, I was talking to one of my clients the other day and he had a really high level on the CRM and he was paying $500 a month for it. Meanwhile, he was only a 2-person operation. He could have been using the $97 version, right? Boom, that's $400 a month right there. I had another client who was in multiple markets and struggling. By the way, if you're in multiple markets and struggling, cut them all out and go to one, okay? By the way, this is not even in my list, but I have one of my clients who was in a bunch of markets. He was like 3 or 4 markets and he was like starting to struggle. And I said, I want you to get rid of everything. I want you to focus on one. I want you to do one strategy. Boom. Okay. This guy had his two best months back to back, right? This month and the last month that he's ever had, right? In quote unquote, a changing market. So get focused, cut unnecessary expenses, cut distractions. Right now, this is the other one right here. Maybe this should be one. The first one. But if you have a pipeline of deals, right, under contract and they're not closing, what I want you to do is review your pipeline of deals, stuff that you have under contract. Sometimes we get deals that just kind of float, right? They're out there in space and nothing's really happening with them. I want you, just like you did with your top 20 leads, what I want you to do is go through your contracts. If you have anything under contract, be like, hey, what do I have to do to get this to close in the next 3 or 4 days? Right? Ask yourself that question. What do I have to do to make sure this closes in the next 3 or 4 days? Call up the title company, call up the buyer, right? Just juice the deal, push it forward, right? This is probably one of the strongest things that you can do that's going to make a difference if you're actually doing deals and getting stuff on a contract. Review your database and be like, oh, I'm doing what I can. I can't really push it forward. That's a bunch of bull crap, okay? Look at your contracts and see what the holdup is. Move it to close and get paid as fast as possible. I talked about this actually in the last podcast, but I'm going to mention this. Make sure your marketing calendar is up. Okay. Again, this is a Google sheet, an Excel spreadsheet of what you're doing for marketing. Make sure that's out for every single week of the year, right? 52 weeks a year, you should be marketing unless it's pre-planned that you're not. So sometimes I recommend not marketing the week of Christmas. That's a big one. And so if you purposely take off that time, that is okay, right? But just don't not do it at the last minute because you're disorganized. So I'm going to review. Number one is if you have a down month, hey, remember your personal confidence, according to my mentor, Dan Sullivan, is your most important job. You've got to protect it. So you got to look at progress versus the goal. How far have you come versus where do you need to go? Right? Don't catastrophize one bad month. Look at all the growth that you've had. Number two, take an inventory of what happened. Why did you have a bad month? Did you get lazy and make a mistake? Hey, no biggie. Let's fix it. But don't make the same mistake twice. Two, maybe the market changed. It did, August 2022, right? How do we adapt? So understand that you are going to have to be a better negotiator. I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. Understand there's a persistence factor also. If all of a sudden you're hearing that a lot of people had bad months, remember Forrest Gump and Lieutenant Dan? They were the only shrimp boat. They were out in the storm. They came back. They were the only boat left. Boom, their business exploded. Next is you've got to generate revenue. So do that by looking at your top 20 leads, identify the next step that you need to take. I'd text your entire database, by the way. Check that out. Go to nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com/CRM to check out the tool that we use there. It's a version of FreedomSoft. Send offers to everybody who you talk to. Wholesalers who get really lazy with their buyers list, right? Call them up, partner with them, help them move their deals either by getting them on the MLS or using your buyers list. Okay, a lot of people get lazy. Next, sharpen up your negotiation skills. You're going to need it. The prices are changing. Sellers need to reset their expectations. Okay, if you haven't bought the No Limit Selling System, nolimitsalessystem.com. If not, listen to the podcast. Go through your books and get rid of stupid unused expenses. Right? Ask for discounts for the stuff that you actually want to keep. The other thing that you need to remember is the pipeline of deals that you already have. Don't let them sit out there in purgatory. Find out what needs to happen to get them to close. Ask yourself, how can I get these deals to close in the next 3 days? Ask your title company that, your escrow company that, your buyers, sellers, whatever it needs to take to get to close. Make that happen. And last, hey, you got to have a marketing calendar. Okay, you need a marketing calendar. Schedule your marketing. Make sure it goes out week after week. If you want a copy of the one that we use, go to nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com/calendar and download a copy of yours today. I will talk to you on the next episode. And next time we talk, okay, I want to hear about that big, fat, juicy wholesale deal that's going to generate you like $35,000 or $50,000. Can't wait to hear about it. Talk to you soon.